They had the audacity to torch my fishing boat to ashes while I watched in horror. The HOA president smiled to my face and said, "Accept our terms or lose everything." What these power-hungry tyrants never discovered. I legally owned the land beneath their entire electrical grid. How did a semi-retired contractor turn a devastating loss into the most satisfying revenge against America's most corrupt homeowners association? After nearly 3 decades running my construction business, I finally decided to downsize and semi-retire at 55. I invested in my dream property, 5 acres with 200 feet of pristine shoreline on Lake Clearwater. The modest house needed work, but as a contractor, that was no problem for me. The real treasure was the small wooden rowboat my father and I had restored together before he passed away. That simple fishing boat wasn't worth much in dollars, but it held decades of memories out on the water with my dad and later, my own children. Every weekend, I'd take that boat out at dawn. My neighbors would wave as I passed, admiring the craftsmanship of our restoration work. It wasn't fancy, just an old wooden fishing boat with a fresh coat of paint and refinished seats. But it was mine, a piece of my family history preserved through hard work. The previous owner warned me about Lakeside Estates, HOA next door, a luxury development with limited lake access. Their once exclusive community had grown overcrowded, with residents fighting over their small beach and dock facilities. For years, they'd been scheming to expand their lakefront control. "They'll start friendly," he warned me. "Then they'll try to buy you out. When that doesn't work, things get complicated." I didn't think much of it at the time. I dealt with difficult clients and partners throughout my construction career. How bad could a neighborhood association be? When I moved in, Patricia Harrington, the HOA president, brought a welcome basket and charm offensive. Her expensive clothes and perfectly maintained appearance screamed corporate executive, not neighbor. She mentioned how lovely my property was and how much nicer it could be with professional landscaping. I thanked her politely but made it clear I enjoyed doing the work myself. 2 weeks later, I discovered they'd called an emergency meeting about my property, without inviting me. My neighbor across the cove leaked that Patricia had declared to the board, "That lake access will be ours, one way or another. Our residents deserve more shoreline, and his property is the perfect expansion opportunity." The morning everything changed, Patricia arrived in her Mercedes, flanked by 2 board members with legal backgrounds. She was in her late 30s, blonde with a perfectly maintained bob haircut, wearing an expensive navy blue suit that screamed corporate authority. Her manicured appearance contrasted sharply with mine. I'm 55, with early gray hair and weathered features from decades of outdoor construction work. My worn jeans and flannel shirt felt suddenly inadequate as she surveyed my humble boat with naked contempt. "Mr. Mitchell," she began, her voice professionally pleasant but eyes cold. "Your dock and boat violate our community's exclusive lake aesthetics. We've been the stewards of this lake's prestige for 20 years. I put down my coffee mug and stared at her. "Excuse me? My property isn't part of your HOA. These docks were here 30 years before your development broke ground." Patricia exchanged glances with her companions. "We've reviewed the original lake covenants from 1982. Your dock extends into shared waterway jurisdiction. We're implementing a new access protocol, $8,000 annually for non-HOA watercraft. It's about preserving our lake's exclusive character." I laughed, genuinely amused by the absurdity. "That's not how property law works, Patricia. And that's for a boat that cost me less than $5,000 to restore." She handed me an official-looking document. "This is our formal notice. The fee begins next month." I handed it right back. "My property predates your HOA. My deed includes riparian rights. You have no jurisdiction here." Her practiced smile vanished. "3 of our board members are attorneys, Mr. Mitchell. We control the county zoning board. Who do you have in your corner?" "A semi-retired contractor with no connections." One of her companions, a thin man with an expensive watch, spoke up. "We can make this difficult or we can come to an arrangement. The HOA is prepared to offer market value for your property. You could relocate to somewhere more suitable." "This is suitable for me," I replied. And it's not for sale. Patricia's smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. Everyone has a price, Mr. Mitchell. And everyone has a breaking point. We're just trying to determine yours. They turned and left, leaving their notice on my porch railing. I watched them drive away in their luxury vehicles, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the morning breeze. This wasn't a conversation between neighbors. It was a declaration of war. The intimidation campaign began immediately. Certified letters filled with legal jargon about unauthorized dock structures and community waterway violations arrived weekly. Each one threatened legal action unless I removed my boat or paid their fabricated access fee. My attorney, a fishing buddy who specialized in property law, reviewed everything. They're bluffing, he assured me. The lake isn't privately owned. Your easements are ironclad, and your property predates their development by decades. But they're hoping you'll get tired of fighting. He wasn't wrong about their persistence. HOA security boats, actually just residents with lake patrol stickers on their pontoons, circled my dock constantly, taking photos and writing in notepads. They'd harass any guests who visited, claiming they were documenting violations. When I had my daughter and her friends over for a barbecue, they circled so close that their wake nearly knocked over our drinks. Twice, I found my mooring lines mysteriously cut overnight. After the second time, I installed security cameras around the property and dock. The next day, Patricia personally delivered a cease and desist letter demanding their removal, claiming they violated HOA bylaws regarding surveillance of common areas. This isn't your HOA property, I reminded her. Her smile was frigid. The county commissioners are old friends, Mr. Mitchell. They have broad authority over nuisance ordinances. Test us if you'd like. The letters escalated to complaints filed with the county about unsightly structures and environmental hazards. Each required my response and attendance at hearings where, mysteriously, the complainants never showed up. Each time, the complaints were dismissed, but they achieved their purpose, consuming my time and energy. My neighbors reported Patricia telling residents that my eyesore property was preventing their home values from reaching their proper potential. She'd organized a special assessment for legal expenses related to lake access expansion. I refused to be intimidated, but it was wearing me down. One evening, feeling particularly frustrated, I dug deeper into my property's history at the county records office. I wanted to understand every detail of my rights before the next inevitable confrontation. That's when I discovered something the previous owner never mentioned. A half-acre section of my land contained an easement for the power substation serving the entire Lakeside Estates development. I found the original utility agreement, a 30-year lease signed when the development was first built. I double-checked the dates. The lease would expire in exactly 3 months. I sat back in my chair, staring at the document, a warm feeling spreading through my chest. For the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. Patricia didn't know it yet, but she'd picked the wrong semi-retired contractor to bully. My daughter's college graduation in Boston was that weekend, but at the last minute, her ceremony was postponed by a day due to campus protests. I flew back early Sunday afternoon, earlier than planned and completely unannounced. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed unusual activity by my dock. I quietly made my way through my backyard and froze at what I saw. My little wooden boat was engulfed in flames, burning fiercely on the water. The dock was starting to catch fire as well. And there stood Patricia in her designer navy suit, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the lakeside setting, gesturing emphatically while a man, who I recognized as her husband, backed away from the scene. Her polished, corporate appearance made a stark contrast to the chaos of the fire. They hadn't seen me yet, my rugged frame and weathered face still in shadow at the edge of the property. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted, rushing toward the dock. Patricia spun around, her face a mask of shock that quickly transformed into cold composure. Her husband paled visibly and began edging toward their SUV parked nearby. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, regaining her poise as my boat continued burning behind her. "What an unexpected surprise. We were just passing by and noticed your boat had caught fire." Such a dangerous situation with these old wooden vessels. I stood face to face with her on the dock, my 6-foot frame towering over her, my gray hair and lined face illuminated by the flames, the heat of my burning boat between us, black smoke billowing into the blue sky. My expression was a mixture of shock and fury, while her composed, youthful features remained calculatingly calm. "You burned my boat," I said, my voice shaking with rage, hands gesturing in disbelief toward the flaming wreckage. She spread her hands innocently, the orange flames reflecting in her eyes. "That's a serious accusation without proof. Perhaps if you had accepted our reasonable access agreement, you'd have had better security." Her husband scurried into their vehicle and started the engine. "I'm calling the police," I said, pulling out my phone. Patricia's plastic smile never wavered. "Go ahead. My brother-in-law will be very interested in your baseless accusations against a respected community leader." She gestured to the burning wreckage. "This unfortunate incident clearly shows how dangerous isolated docks can be. We're prepared to offer a generous solution. We'll purchase your property at current assessed value for community expansion. You can avoid any further incidents." The fire department arrived minutes later. The fire investigator didn't mince words after examining the scene. Accelerant patterns showed deliberate arson. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. He showed me chemical residue evidence and distinctive pour patterns on the remaining dock planks. 2 neighbors confirmed seeing Patricia and her husband by my dock just before the fire started. The police opened an investigation, but Patricia's brother-in-law was the county commissioner. Within days, the case was quietly classified as inconclusive evidence. I stood at the end of my charred dock, staring at the blackened fragments of my father's boat floating on the water. I'd lost something irreplaceable. But as I looked across the lake at the pristine homes of Lakeside Estates, I remembered the lease documents in my desk drawer. Patricia had just made this personal, and now I had nothing left to lose. The next day, I received a formal offer letter from the HOA. They would purchase my property at their assessed value, about 70% of market rate, in light of recent safety concerns. The letter strongly implied that refusing would lead to continued unfortunate circumstances. I called the utility company instead. When the representative answered, I introduced myself and explained the situation with the soon-to-expire easement on my property. There was a long pause. "Sir," he finally said, his voice noticeably tense, "are you certain about this? That substation powers all 287 homes in Lakeside Estates and their private amenities. The HOA assured us years ago they controlled that parcel. We've been operating under that assumption." "I have the deed and original easement right here," I replied. "Would you like me to email copies?" Another long pause. "Sir, relocating that substation would cost millions and take years of permits and construction. It's a critical infrastructure node for that entire area." I affected an innocent tone. "So what typically happens when these easements expire?" "Usually, the landowner negotiates a new lease at current market rates. But in situations like this..." His voice trailed off. "In situations like what?" He hesitated. "Where there's a dispute or the landowner is uncooperative. We might have to seek emergency eminent domain through the Public Utility Commission. But that's a last resort and can take years of litigation." I thanked him for his time and hung up. Next, I called a specialized utility attorney recommended by my property lawyer. When we met the following day, I laid out everything: the harassment, the arson, and the power substation discovery. She reviewed the documents carefully. "This is quite the leverage. You have 3 options. Negotiate a new lease at current market rates, require them to remove equipment and restore your land to its original condition, or sell them that portion of land at your price. What would fair market rate be for this type of easement?" She calculated briefly. "Given its critical nature and the development it serves, anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 monthly, plus a substantial upfront payment for the new lease term." I smiled. $8,000 monthly sounds familiar. The next time Patricia appeared on my property with more veiled threats about making my life unbearable until I sold, I simply smiled. "How's the electrical service in Lakeside Estates?" I asked casually. "Reliable?" "Because I've been reviewing some interesting documents about who actually owns the land under your power supply." Her confusion quickly transformed to shock as understanding dawned. For the first time since I'd met her, Patricia Harrington was speechless. "You should have done better research before declaring war," I said quietly. "I spent 30 years reviewing property details for construction projects. Did you really think I wouldn't examine every inch of my own land?" She recovered quickly. "This changes nothing. We have resources you can't imagine." "So do I," I replied. "Specifically, the resources powering every home in your precious development. I wonder how property values would fare after a few months without electricity." My attorney delivered formal notices to the utility company and the HOA board the following week. The language was clear. I wasn't renewing their sweetheart $1,200 year lease that was established decades ago. My new terms, $8,000 monthly, with a $500,000 upfront infrastructure security deposit to protect against unfortunate accidents, or complete removal of all equipment within 90 days of the expiration date. The certified letter was delivered during an HOA board meeting. My security cameras captured the moment Patricia read it aloud to the board, their faces transforming from confusion to horror as they understood the implications. The next morning, Patricia burst through my front door without knocking, waving the letter so violently it tore. Her carefully maintained composure had completely dissolved. "This is illegal extortion," she screamed. "You can't hold our power hostage." I remained calm. "Please don't enter my home without permission again. We'll have this invalidated. The Utility Commission will never allow it." I walked to my computer and pulled up the security footage from the day of the fire. "Speaking of illegal," I said, playing the video showing the arson in progress, with a clear view of her husband's distinctive vehicle and both of them by my dock. "Arson carries a 15-year sentence in this state. I have this and much more ready for the FBI. They don't answer to your brother-in-law." She blanched. "You have no proof who started that fire." "I'm not a lawyer like your friends, Patricia. I'm a contractor with 30 years of experience who documents everything. The FBI will sort it out after I terminate your power supply." She left without another word, but the wheels were already in motion. Within hours, panicked residents flooded the HOA office. My neighbor across the cove kept me updated by text message. "Total chaos," he wrote. "They're learning about the boat, the harassment, everything." Patricia tried to claim it was all necessary for community improvement, but people are furious about potentially losing power. The emergency HOA meeting that evening turned hostile when residents learned their power supply was jeopardized because of the board's vendetta against one neighbor. For once, Patricia faced the community's rage rather than directing it. "My husband needs electricity for his medical equipment," one elderly resident shouted. "You've endangered all of us over a petty land grab," another demanded. "How much have we been paying in legal fees for this personal crusade?" Patricia attempted to regain control. "We're handling this situation. Mr. Mitchell is being unreasonable." "Unreasonable?" interrupted a resident who lived near the cove. "You burned his boat. We saw it. And now our homes could lose power because of your criminal behavior." By midnight, 3 board members had resigned. Patricia was clinging to her position, but the damage was done. The community that had followed her blindly for years was now seeing the true cost of her methods. The utility company representatives weren't idle either. They contacted me directly, bypassing both the HOA and my attorney. "We're caught in the middle here," their senior manager explained. "We can't let nearly 300 homes lose power, but we also can't force you to renew the lease. Would you consider negotiating directly with us, separate from the HOA situation?" I was firm. "My terms remain the same, but I'm willing to guarantee the lease for 30 years with no interruption of service if my conditions are met." This isn't about the utility company. It's about a corrupt HOA that needs to be held accountable. He sighed heavily. "I understand. For what it's worth, we've worked with many HOAs over the years. This one has been particularly difficult." By the end of the week, The remaining HOA board requested a formal meeting. This was no longer about a small wooden boat or lakefront access. It was about the survival of their community as they knew it. The HOA's attorney requested a meeting at neutral ground, the county courthouse conference room. I arrived with my utility lawyer, the arson investigator who had examined my dock, and an FBI contact who specialized in public corruption cases. Patricia was conspicuously absent. In her place sat an elderly man I recognized as Judge Robert Caldwell, a retired circuit court judge who lived in Lakeside Estates. His reputation for fairness was well known in the county. "Mr. Mitchell," he began, "I've been asked to represent the homeowners in this matter. Not the board, the homeowners. Many of us were unaware of the actions taken against you until recently. On the table between us lay my non-negotiable terms. $25,000 payment for my destroyed boat and dock repairs, a new 30-year utility easement at $8,000 monthly legally binding acknowledgement that my property has zero obligation to the HOA, Patricia's immediate resignation, and a restraining order preventing her approaching my property, a public apology published in the county newspaper." The HOA's lawyer began objecting to several points until the utility representative interjected. "Let me be perfectly clear," he said. "Moving that substation would cost minimum $5.2 million and require at least 18 to 24 months of construction, leaving the community without power for significant periods. Not to mention permit issues with the watershed protection zone. The utility company cannot justify this expense or disruption for what is essentially a private dispute." Judge Caldwell nodded thoughtfully. "As I understand it, Mr. Mitchell, your father helped you restore that boat? It was a family heirloom of sorts." "Yes," I said, surprised by the question. "We worked on it for 3 summers before he passed." He removed his glasses. "I lost my father's pocket watch in a home burglary 20 years ago. The monetary value was minimal, but the loss still pains me. Some things can't be replaced with money." He turned to the other HOA representatives. "I believe Mr. Mitchell's terms are reasonable, given the circumstances. What happened to him represents a profound failure of leadership and basic decency." The HOA attorney whispered urgently to the judge, who shook his head firmly. "We accept all terms," Judge Caldwell announced, "with one addition." He looked directly at me. "We'll establish a $50,000 annual community scholarship in your father's name, dedicated to construction trades education. Your father's legacy should be preserved beyond just the boat." It was the first genuine gesture I'd seen from anyone in Lakeside Estates. For a moment I couldn't speak. "The scholarship fund would be independently managed," he continued, "and would help young people learn the skills you and your father shared." I nodded slowly. "I accept." As we signed the agreements, Judge Caldwell added, "Patricia Harrington's resignation was tendered this morning. Her husband has been cooperating with investigators regarding the fire. I want you to know that many of us were afraid to speak up about her methods. That ends today. With the settlement money, I rebuilt my dock, this time with advanced security systems and better materials. I purchased a new fishing boat, nothing fancy, but perfect for continuing the tradition of taking my grandchildren fishing on weekend mornings, just like my father did with me. The monthly easement payments went into a trust fund for my retirement and my grandson's college education. The first check arrived with a handwritten note from Judge Caldwell. "Fair payment for fair use. Thank you for your reasonableness in resolution." The FBI investigation into the arson mysteriously reopened when the county commissioner, Patricia's brother-in-law, lost his re-election bid after evidence of his interference in multiple cases reached local media. Documents leaked showing how he had pressured the fire inspector to classify the boat fire as inconclusive, despite clear evidence. Patricia's husband faced charges, while she avoided prosecution by cooperating extensively with investigators. Their marriage collapsed under the scandal, and their Lakeside Estates home sold quickly at a significant loss. The new HOA board, led by Judge Caldwell, implemented complete transparency reforms. All meetings were now open to non-HOA neighbors whose properties bordered the community. They fired the security company that had harassed me and established an ethics committee with members from both inside and outside the development. Most surprising was the community's transformation. Several residents approached me to apologize for remaining silent during Patricia's reign of intimidation. We were afraid of becoming targets ourselves, one retired teacher admitted. She had a way of making problems for anyone who questioned her. 3 neighbors offered to help with fishing gear for my new boat. One even helped me install the new dock lighting system. The invisible barrier between my property and lakeside estates gradually dissolved. 6 months after the settlement, I received an unexpected letter with a Los Angeles postmark. Inside was a handwritten confession from Patricia, part of her plea agreement with prosecutors. "Power became more important than principles," she wrote. "What began as a genuine desire to improve our community warped into something unrecognizable. I sacrificed everything chasing control of a lake that was never mine to claim. I've lost my home, my marriage, and my reputation. I can never undo the damage I've caused. But I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my life regretting my actions and trying to make amends." I didn't frame this one like I joked about doing. Instead, I sent it to my daughter, now a law student focusing on property rights. She used it in a case study about HOA overreach that was published in her university law review. The first recipient of my father's scholarship was the grandson of one of my neighbors, a young man who wanted to learn carpentry but couldn't afford the trade school. Watching him receive the award at the community center that had once banned me from entering felt like the completion of a circle. Standing your ground isn't about stubbornness, it's about justice. That HOA believed their money, connections, and intimidation tactics made them untouchable. They never imagined the power they coveted was literally under my control the entire time. Every month when I deposit that $8,000 check, I take my simple new fishing boat, christened Last Laugh, out on the water. The same residents who once avoided eye contact now wave as I pass. Not out of fear, but respect. Not because I won, but because I fought back when they wouldn't. The judge who replaced Patricia still calls me occasionally to discuss community improvements that might affect my property. Not with demands or threats, but with genuine interest in finding solutions that work for everyone. It's how neighbors should treat each other. As for Patricia, I heard through my daughter that she works at a legal aid clinic in California, helping homeowners fight predatory HOAs. Sometimes justice comes full circle in ways you never expect. The power wasn't in the grid beneath my land. It was in refusing to surrender to bullies hiding behind bylaws and boardrooms. My father taught me that some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds seem stacked against you. That lesson proved more valuable than any boat or property could ever be. When people ask me if I'm bitter about what happened, I just smile and point to the thriving community we have now. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation. And sometimes standing your ground isn't just about protecting what's yours. It's about creating something better for everyone.